she whispered. It's over, at my father's funeral, his coffin still open, my grief still raw. 2 hours later, I found her hotel booking, with my boss. My name's Ethan Cole. I'm 38 years old, living just outside of Denver, Colorado. I've worked in corporate finance for most of my adult life, same company, 13 years. I climbed from entry-level analyst to department lead, which sounds a lot shinier than it feels when you're pulling 70-hour weeks to keep the roof over your head and your people employed. I wasn't flashy. I was steady. I believed that if you built a life out of consistency, honesty, and effort, it would hold. Turns out some things rot from the inside, even when the outside looks fine. I married Claire 7 years ago. We met through mutual friends at a 4th of July barbecue. She laughed at something dumb I said about overcooked hot dogs, and that was it for me. She was bold where I was quiet. Spontaneous, vibrant, magnetic. I fell hard. We got married, too, years later in my parents' backyard. My dad cried that day. Big man, Vietnam vet, tough as they come. But he cried when he gave her away. Said she reminded him of Mom, which was his way of saying I'd lucked out. And I thought I had. I'm not the type who seeks attention. I'd rather watch people than be watched. My routines were simple. I was up by 6:30 every morning, ran 2 miles before work, packed my own lunch to save money. Sunday mornings were sacred. Coffee with my dad no matter what. That was our time. Since Mom passed, we'd made it a thing. Just us, same diner, same booth. He was my anchor. Losing him was like someone cutting the brake lines on a car. You don't notice right away, but when you need to slow down, nothing works. I thought I had everything I wanted. A stable marriage. A career I'd built from scratch. A house we renovated together with our own hands. That place wasn't just wood and drywall, it was memories. Paint-stained clothes, late-night floorboard fixes, arguments about tile that turned into laughter. We had plans to start trying for a kid next year. Claire even picked out the room we'd turn into a nursery. I kept thinking, it's not perfect, but it's ours. But in hindsight, I think I missed something, or maybe I ignored it. There was a subtle shift after my dad's diagnosis. He was given 6 months. We got 10. Claire was supportive at first, even took days off to sit with me at the hospital. But slowly she started pulling back. Her words were still kind, but they felt hollow, distracted, like her mind was always elsewhere. I chalked it up to the stress. Who wasn't drowning in it? I figured we'd be okay once the storm passed. I thought that once we buried the pain, we'd go back to what we were. But storms don't just pass. Sometimes, they clear the way for truths you never saw coming. Looking back now, I realize I was building a life around someone who had already checked out. I just didn't know it yet. And maybe the worst part is, I can't tell if I missed the signs or if she was just that good at hiding them. It didn't unravel all at once. It never does. If it had, maybe I would have acted sooner. But it was quiet at first, more absence than action. Claire started staying late at work, which wasn't unusual in our world, but the excuses stopped sounding real. She used to text me when she worked overtime, sometimes a picture of her desk, her takeout dinner, something small. But one day it stopped, and I barely noticed. Just thought she must be tired. That's how it begins, with your own justifications. Then it was the money. Not much, just odd charges here and there. A couple of Uber rides in neighborhoods that didn't make sense. A weekend spa charge when she said she was visiting her cousin. Once or twice I asked her about it casually. She'd laugh it off, kiss my cheek, say I was overthinking things again. And honestly, I believed her. I wanted to. I'd spent years trusting her. It felt impossible to imagine she'd lie. We stopped having real conversations. I don't mean we were fighting, we weren't. That was the problem. There was nothing to fight about because there was nothing. No spark, no tension, no laughter. Our dinners went from long, winding chats to mechanical chewing and scrolling through our phones. She was there physically, but emotionally, it felt like I was dining with a shadow. One night I brought up taking a short trip after my dad's funeral. I thought maybe a change of scenery would help. Claire didn't even look up from her laptop. She said, "Sure, if I can get the time off." Just like that. Flat, disconnected, like I was pitching a business proposal. I started to notice her phone habits. She'd always been private with her phone, but lately she wouldn't leave it out of sight. Bathroom? It went with her. Showers? It was face down on the counter, locked. I tried not to be the guy who snoops. I hated even thinking that way. But something didn't sit right. A gut instinct I couldn't shake. And when I asked her, just once if everything was okay, she smiled that same too smooth smile and said, "You're just stressed. Grief messes with your head." That line stuck with me. It was so carefully chosen, so calculated, like she was reminding me I wasn't in my right mind, and that gave her cover for anything strange she might do. After that, I started paying more attention. She had a new perfume I hadn't smelled before. She bought new clothes but didn't tell me where she'd worn them. I noticed a hotel keycard once in her purse, hidden behind receipts. When I asked, she said it was from a conference her department had last month. No hesitation, no stutter. Then came the HR email, just a casual heads up about an internal restructuring. My boss, Daniel Shaw, was getting promoted. Claire worked in another division, but I remembered they'd been assigned to a crossover project together 3 months prior. Nothing serious. Or so I thought. It started to click in pieces. Small things I'd ignored. Her sudden fondness for long lunch breaks. His name popping up more casually in conversation. That one time she mentioned a late meeting with senior leadership but couldn't name who was in the room. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. Grief, after all, does mess with your head. That's what everyone said. But deep down, I already knew. I just hadn't seen the proof yet, and once I did, I wouldn't be the same man ever again. It happened on the day we buried my father. I was already hollowed out, barely holding it together. The kind of grief that sits in your bones, not just your chest. The kind where everything feels underwater, voices muffled, movement slow. We were standing by the graveside. Claire was holding my arm like she always did in public, tight, reassuring, performative. She hadn't cried once. Not at the hospital, not during the service, not when my sister read the eulogy that had taken us both days to write. The priest was saying something about peace, dust, and eternity. I wasn't really listening, I was just watching the casket lower into the ground. And that's when she leaned in, her voice soft enough that no one else heard. "It's over." Just those 2 words. No emotion. No explanation. Then she let go of my arm. I thought I misheard her. My brain rejected it instantly. I didn't even look at her. My heart started thudding in my ears, and I remember thinking, this can't be happening. Not now, not here. But I didn't ask her what she meant. Something told me I already knew. There was no shock. Just this strange, cold stillness. Like my body had been waiting for this moment without telling me. We got back to the house. People came and went. Condolences, casseroles, quiet nods. Claire stayed just long enough to be polite. Then she said she had a headache and went upstairs. I watched her disappear around the corner, not knowing it would be the last time I ever saw her as my wife. I sat on the edge of my bed later that night, fully dressed, suit wrinkled, tie still around my neck. I hadn't cried. Couldn't. I just stared at the floor, mind buzzing with half-thoughts. Then my phone lit up. It was a confirmation email from a travel site. At first, I assumed it was spam. I was about to swipe it away when I saw the name. Claire M. Cole, booking confirmed, 2 nights, Hotel Renaissance, room 417, check-in, Sunday, 6:30 p.m., just 3 hours after the funeral. The booking had been made a week prior. She hadn't even waited until he was gone. I opened her email account. We used to share everything. One of those nothing-to-hide things we agreed on early in the marriage. She never changed her password. There were more confirmations. Carpastry. Bookings. One at a Marriott downtown. One at a spa resort in Aspen. All tagged with the same travel partner name. Daniel Shaw. My boss. I felt like the ground had dropped out beneath me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was numb. Silent. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting to feel something. Instead, I started opening the attachments. Receipts, room service orders, private dinner reservations, digital key access logs. Everything was there, hidden in plain sight. She had been sleeping with him for at least 4 months. 4 months during which I'd been watching my father die. 4 months where I'd been collapsing under the weight of grief and responsibility, and she'd been slipping out the side door to meet him. There was one email that stuck with me. Subject line: cancel Monday morning. I'll need time to recover. It was sent at 1:04 a.m. right after one of those hotel check-ins. No shame, no hesitation. The betrayal wasn't just the sex, it was the ease of it. The calculated nature. The fact that she looked me in the eye every day, kissed my cheek, asked how I was holding up, while she was arranging getaways with the man who signed my performance reviews. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I sat there in silence, phone in hand, room pitch dark except for the light of that cursed screen. I read every message, every reservation, every whisper of what they'd been doing behind my back. Then I looked at my own calendar. My performance evaluation was scheduled for the following week, with Daniel. The irony hit me so hard I laughed. Dry, bitter, ugly. That's when something shifted inside me. Not rage, not sorrow, just a clear, cold awareness. I realized I'd been played by 2 people who had smiled to my face while carving out their affair behind closed doors. I realized they didn't just break my trust, they built their comfort on my grief. Used it like camouflage. I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of a meltdown. That's not who I am. But I also knew this wouldn't end with me staring at a screen. Something had to be done, and I was going to make sure they'd both remember exactly who I was. The night I discovered the truth, something inside me clicked into place. Not a breakdown, not a tantrum, but a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to beg or accuse or argue, no yelling, no dramatic fight. That would only give her power. And Daniel? He wasn't just a man who crossed a personal line. He was my superior, the one who held influence over my career. Sleeping with my wife was disgusting, but doing it while overseeing my work performance? That was a liability. An HR nightmare. He just didn't realize it yet. I started with what I knew, my company's internal systems. I'd been in finance, long enough to understand access levels, audit trails, and where sensitive data tends to slip through the cracks. I wasn't hacking anything. I didn't need to. I simply reviewed department travel expenses. And right there in black and white, 2 business trips that shouldn't have existed, duplicate expense reports, overlapping dates, hotel stays tagged as client meetings with no clients listed. I pulled every single one of Daniel's reimbursement forms from the last 6 months. I cross-referenced them with Claire's calendar entries from her shared work account. They lined up like clockwork. Every time he claimed he was in Dallas or San Diego for client meetings, she, coincidentally, had PTO logged. Not always in the same system, but when you knew where to look, it was obvious. That was phase 1, collecting the evidence. Phase 2 involved HR, but I couldn't go to them without being strategic. You can't just walk in and say, "Hey, my boss is screwing my wife, fire him." That's not how the corporate world works. You need policy violations, not broken hearts. So I built a file. I printed everything. Expense reports, calendar overlaps, hotel bills under Claire's name paid with Daniel's corporate card. Even the dinner charges he tried to code under client hospitality. I included screenshots of suggestive emails Claire had sent from her personal address, time-stamped during work hours, all tied to misuse of company funds and violation of workplace conduct policy. Then I did something subtle but effective. I submitted a completely unrelated whistleblower report about department budget discrepancies anonymously through our internal compliance portal. It triggered an internal audit, and within 2 weeks the finance team had begun reviewing travel spending across management. That bought me time and cover. During all this, I never changed a thing in my behavior. I went to work. I said good morning to Daniel. I kissed Claire on the forehead when she walked past. I played dumb. Not because I was weak, but because patience was power now. I wasn't reacting. I was orchestrating. Then came phase 3. Once I was confident the audit was underway, I requested a one-on-one with HR, officially. I didn't go in as a victim. I went in as an employee concerned about leadership ethics. I presented the file. I laid it out calmly, stating facts only. No emotion, no accusations, just policy breaches. Personal affairs are messy, but corporate misconduct? That's actionable. HR didn't say much that day. They never do. But I knew by the way they nodded, the way they asked to keep the documents, that the wheels were turning. 3 weeks later, Daniel was called into a leadership review. 2 days after that, he was placed on administrative leave. The internal communication said it was tied to non-compliance during a financial audit. Claire asked me about it over dinner. I just shrugged and said, must be serious. The final strike came when Claire got a notice from her company's HR. Daniel had listed her as a business partner on several cross-division projects. When his conduct came under review, her name did too. The moment she became part of the investigation, her work device was seized, her access suspended. She wasn't fired, at least not yet, but her reputation was fractured. She was under scrutiny, and in a corporate world that thrives on clean optics, scrutiny is a slow death. She finally confronted me one morning, voice shaking, asking if I'd done something. I looked at her, calm as ever, and said, "You made your decisions. The consequences were already in motion." I didn't scream. I didn't demand apologies. I didn't get revenge through rage. I took back control through silence, logic, and precision. She'd gambled everything on secrecy. I simply turned on the light. And just when you think this story is over, there's one more thing. I filed for divorce a week later, but I didn't just walk away. I had documentation, emails, financials, proof of emotional abandonment during a time of crisis. Colorado recognizes fault-based conditions when determining spousal support. With what I had, I ensured she left with almost nothing. The house, in my name, my retirement, protected. Her lawyer tried to negotiate. I didn't budge. By the time the dust settled, she had no job, no marriage, no fallback plan. And Daniel? He was quietly pushed out of the company without public scandal, but his references, gone, his credibility, shattered. Corporate is polite that way. They don't fire you, they erase you. The man I was before, he'd have confronted them both in anger. But the man I became, he let the truth do the damage. That's the kind of revenge they never see coming. And it's the kind they never recover from. It's been just over a year since it all unraveled. Since the funeral, the whisper, the bookings, and the betrayal. Since the quiet war I waged in silence and the cold, deliberate way I dismantled everything they built behind my back. I won't say it was easy. None of it was. Closure never comes, wrapped in a neat bow. But there's a peace you earn when you choose patience over rage. When you don't scream, but you outlast. Claire moved out within 2 weeks of the divorce being finalized. She didn't fight for the house, she couldn't afford to. With no job, no solid reference, and an HR record under review, her options were limited. Last I heard, she was renting a studio downtown and working part-time at a co-working space. We don't speak. There's nothing left to say. She burned every bridge and then stood on the ashes expecting sympathy. But even betrayal has a price. As for Daniel, the fallout was quieter but no less permanent. He was allowed to resign instead of being terminated. That's the company's way of avoiding lawsuits and press. But the corporate world has a memory. Word travels, people talk. He's been bouncing between consulting gigs, nothing stable, nothing long-term. I heard through a mutual contact that he tried to interview for a director role at another firm, didn't make it past the background.
Check.
Turns out, misuse of corporate funds during internal audit isn't easy to explain away. Meanwhile, I stayed, at least for a while. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me run, but over time I realized I didn't need that job anymore. I had money saved, no debts, and more importantly, no reason to stay somewhere that reminded me of what they did. So I left, on my own terms. I took a consulting role part-time, set my own hours, rebuilt my mornings. I still run 2 miles a day. I still sit in that diner on Sundays. Alone now, but not lonely. My dad's not in the seat across from me anymore, but his presence hasn't left. Funny enough, when all this came out, a former employee from another department reached out. She'd worked under Daniel years ago and left quietly after some inappropriate mentorship. She said watching what I did gave her closure she never got. She didn't want revenge, she just wanted to be believed. And for the first time, she felt like someone had finally called the guy out. I don't tell this story to brag. I tell it because when you've been gutted by betrayal, your first instinct is to burn everything down. But sometimes the real strength is in doing the opposite. Sometimes the most brutal revenge isn't loud, it's surgical. It's letting people choke on the silence they once used to manipulate you. If I could go back and warn the old me, I'd say this: don't chase justice through anger, build it through truth. Let the facts bleed them dry. What happened at my father's funeral felt like the end of everything I knew, but it wasn't. It was the beginning of everything I hadn't dared to become yet: stronger, sharper, free. Would you have done the same in my shoes?